Hello. So the next thing on my desk is going to be one of the craft projects I've had underway for a while. Now, I'm terrible for this. I've lost count of how many unfinished projects I have, but this is one of the ones I'm furthest on with. It's a toy capybara, because everyone needs more capybaras in their life. It's from a pattern I bought on Etsy. The link is down there in the description. Until this project, I hadn't done any crochet since I was a teenager, so it took me a while to get going. When I started off, it really didn't seem to be coming out the right shape, as you can see, so I ended up pulling this attempt apart and starting again from the beginning. The second attempt had a bit of a nicer shape, even if my stitching isn't the neatest, and before long it started to take up quite an interesting shape. Before long I was getting towards the end of the main body with plenty of stuffing inside it, and here it is almost complete. The only thing I haven't actually done is fastened off. The stitching is a bit lumpy, a bit of a mess, because I'm not really used to doing this. Partly it's because I'm using double knit yarn, because it was easy to get. But it can be a bit of a pain to crochet with, without constantly splitting the yarn with your hook. If I ever do this pattern again, I'll probably use baby yarn as the pattern recommended, and I'll pick a better colour too. So firstly, once I've threaded my needle, I'm going to fasten off and sew out what I've done. I'm not really a fan of how the end sticks out a bit into a point here, but that's the way it came out, and I'm not really sure if there's anything I can do about that now, so we'll just live with that. I'm sewing this up pretty roughly without really thinking about where I'm putting the needle. Really, to be nice and neat, I should be paying more attention to exactly what I'm doing here and where the yarn is going. But the mood of this project is very much, let's try this, let's see where it goes, and if it's okay but not perfect, then it can be a learning experience for the future. Now the back end has been fastened off, I still have quite a long tail where I started, so I'm going to hide this end too inside the body of the capybara. I do need to get better at actually holding the thing in front of the camera. And there we are. The body is the biggest single piece of this beast, but there are various other bits and pieces to make up and attach for the limbs, ears and so on. The ears start with the instruction to make a magic ring, and this is where I had a bit of a problem. This, The Complete Book of Handicrafts, is the book I learned crochet from when I was a kid. It belonged to my grandmother and it was published about 50 years ago. You can see all the basic stitches are in here and various projects you can make, but magic rings just weren't part of the British crochet repertoire at that point, if they'd even been invented at all. I've had to go and research how to do this, so this is going to be a bit scrappy. But I found a way that seems to work quite well for making your first slip stitch and then stitching the first chain onto the ring. It was from a YouTube tutorial. I'll put a link to that in the description as well. There are two things I find hardest in crochet: starting a piece off without the work just spinning round and round the hook, and getting the tension right. Magic rings combine both of those in one. My first magic ring was always going to be a bit of a struggle, but it came together surprisingly well, all things considered. Each time so far that I've tried to do a magic ring, the biggest problem I have is completing the ring by slip stitching the loop back into the first stitch. Hopefully, it's something I'll get better at in the future. Now the ring's complete, I can stitch into it, and the ring becomes a little cup shape. And eventually looks like this. It's going to be a capybara ear. As most capybaras have two ears, we have to do the same again. By the way, in case you're wondering, I do have the original sound for the video turned off right now, and the reason is you'd just be able to hear me counting to myself all the time. I find it much easier to keep track of where I am if I count out loud as I go, instead of just doing it in my head. For some reason, the numbers stick in my mind much better if I do, but you don't really want to hear me going 1, 2, and so on in the background, really. So I've edited that out. And there we have two ears. Next onto the legs. I'm starting to get the hang of beginning a magic ring now. The leg then continues fairly similarly to the ears. If you look carefully, you can see a few places where I accidentally split the yarn and have to go back a stitch. Next time I'm definitely going to be getting some baby yarn rather than this double knit. I'm quite pleased with the shape I'm getting here. The ears weren't stuffed, but the legs are because they'll end up a little bit longer. With small things like this, it's a good idea to start on the stuffing now, rather than try and squeeze it all in at the end. I've maybe filled it up a little bit too much. It would have been easier to start the next round of stitches if I'd left the last round slightly proud of the stuffing. The big difference with the legs is that for the first time in this project, it's time to change colours. I mean, admittedly from brown to a different brown, but when you're making a capybara, that kind of comes with the territory. Time to add a bit more stuffing now that the dark brown has advanced a round. This leg is tiny compared to the body. The rounds are already starting to reduce. As it closes up, I need to put the last lot of stuffing inside and then finish closing up the bottom end of the leg. And here's the first leg, essentially finished. The pattern said to leave long tails on both ends so that they can be used for sewing the parts together later. As capybaras are generally bilaterally symmetrical, here's the second leg. I didn't think you'd want to see me crocheting the whole thing because it is the same as the first over again, but I do think I managed to make the second one a little bit neater than the first. The next part is going to be the front paws, and I already know from reading the pattern that that's going to be terribly fiddly and probably need a few more restarts to get the shape of the paws and the claws just right. We'll see how it goes though. Thank you for watching, and I hope you come back again to see what I do next. Bye for now.